Hello, everyone. Welcome to Let's Talk Strategy Season 2. Today, I am delighted to join by Brian Hunt. Brian is the CEO of Core BPO, a business process outsourcing company focused on helping organizations scale through operational excellence, talent, and innovative business solutions. With extensive leadership experience and a strong track record of building high performing teams and businesses, Brian brings values, insights on leadership, growth, and strategy, and also the future of work. Brian, welcome to Let's Talk Strategy. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Lovely. So, Brian, let's quickly jump on to our first round, which is your journey. Let's start with the first question. We would like to know about your career journey and the experience that shaped your path.
Yeah, so my career started in consulting. I joined Deloitte Consulting right after university, and I worked there for a number of years, and then transferred over to a company that I helped found, which was a company called Acuity Group. We did a lot of enterprise system implementation, again, people, process, systems. Um, and was there for about 5 years until that company was acquired by Accenture. And then I ran a digital agency for a number of years. Did a couple of acquisitions during that time frame. One of which was a staffing and recruiting company, and so I transitioned over to that company and ran that for about 10 years, bringing a lot of the people, systems, process experience that I'd had to kind of a staffing and recruiting model. And then for the last few years, I've been building an outsourcing company, a business process outsourcing company. We're primarily located in India, but we've got staff that are all over Asia, Eastern Europe, and Central and South America.
Sounds exciting. Thank you for sharing that, Brian. Jumping on to the next one now. All through your journey until you've created Core BPO, what were some defining moments in your professional life?
Yeah, I think one of the things that has been a defining aspect of what I've experienced is I've really been either a consultant or kind of an executive running either consulting projects or my own business. So I've always had kind of an eye for looking at things from the outside in rather than being involved in the day-to-day operations. I think that's kind of helped me to view things from a perspective of how can we make this a little bit more efficient? How can we make this a little bit more effective? And it's been good in some ways. In other ways, it's been great to have people around me that are truly experts in what they're doing. That kind of allows me to look at things from a new perspective, while they focus on being excellent at what they do.
Amazing to hear. And I think there's a great level of learning for me and for the other viewers as well. So thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. Now, jumping on to your early career days, right? I mean, uh, would you be able to share some lessons that you learned which are still, applicable today or has influenced today in some manner?
Yeah, I think one of the things that that I learned early on in my career is that time is money. Whether it's individuals' time or time elapsed. So the more efficient and effective you are in virtually everything you do, then you're ultimately going to be more profitable, and create more revenue. And so that's been and that was hammered home from the first time I had a project go over budget to watching kind of a P&L on a monthly and quarterly basis. And it's really helped to kind of frame up my viewpoint, my standing, that people are kind of wired to do the things that they do well. And when you have an organization, you need to have an organization full of people that are doing things really well. They enjoy what they're doing. They're engaged in what they're doing. They're skilled at what they do. And when you create that kind of an environment, and then you apply a level of efficiency and effectiveness, it really helps to kind of build, a stronger organization.
That's very intriguing and very interesting to know as well, actually. One last question in this direction itself. Like, of course, there has been a great journey for you, until now, of course. Um, any advice that you'd like to give to your younger self that, hey, Brian, you could have done this better when you started?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I underestimated when I was younger, and frankly, I'm not sure I would tell myself this, but building a business on your own, or even with some great partners, building a business of any kind is a challenging exercise. So I would certainly seek more advice and more guidance than I did when I was younger in terms of building an organization. But I'm not sure I would tell myself how difficult it is, because I think an element of not knowing how hard it is makes it a little bit easier to jump straight in and kind of figure it out, which I think is truly every entrepreneur's journey. You have to jump in and kind of just figure it out as you go.
100%. And how they say, it's not the success, but the journey that matters. So that's awesome.
Absolutely.
Lovely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brian, thank you for sharing this. Jumping on to the next part, which is leadership and growth. Now, how has your definition of leadership evolved across through your tenures?
I think back in the day, I probably had a higher level of confidence in my own ability than maybe was even justified. I think that's probably common amongst younger entrepreneurs. They have a tendency to be over confident in their own skills. I think in terms of leadership, I've learned to really, really appreciate the different types of people that you need to run an organization. Um, and it's not just personality types. It's really kind of how people are wired. Um, you need the people that are truly grounded, that truly want to show up, day in and day out at the same time, doing the same things. And that needs to be celebrated and appreciated. I can think of, multiple business partners that I've had over the years that are truly consistent. And then I've had other business partners that are, fiery and passionate, and, they bring some energy to the organization, and at times some disruption to an organization. And you kind of have to be okay with that. You have to learn that there's a balance that makes a successful company, a balance of different personality types, and really just celebrating people for who they are, and not really making them anything different than who they are. I think that too many people try to lead and say, do this and do that. And I think people are naturally gravitate towards what they do well, and they naturally gravitate towards, um, um, what feels right. Um, and, uh, and, and certain roles, even within a company, there's certain roles that require certain levels of personality that are different. You think of like a salesperson versus a controller in accounting. It couldn't be more different from a personality standpoint. Both extremely valuable. Both need to be celebrated for their own personality and their own traits. And those two personalities and traits can clash at times, and that's okay. And I think as a leader, I've learned to just kind of celebrate the differences in people, celebrate the need for everyone, and the different skills and personalities that they bring to the table.
That's lovely to hear. Thank you for that. Brian, the next question is more towards our startup or the entrepreneur, audience. One question that actually pops up pretty much in every conversation with any startup founder who are pretty much in an early stage is, we tend to get scared of how to build a team, how to take the first step because we are pre-revenue or we know what we want to build, but we don't really know how we can actually do it. So, what would be your thoughts or what would be your advice on any startup founder who's wanting to build a team but do not really understand what the first step could be?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that is important for entrepreneurs to do is just take the first step and then take the next step. I always say that building a company is like running a marathon, except there is no finish line. The finish line just keeps moving. And once you start a company, you don't really stop it. There's really only two options, actually three options. You can shut it down, you can keep running it, or you can sell it. And hopefully everybody gets an opportunity to sell their business one day, which is always a fun experience. But in general, there's really only one of those three options. So it's a race, and you can only win a race one step at a time. And so you just got to take that first step. I think people tend to try to overthink things too much in the beginning. Meaning they try to have everything, all the answers, all the questions answered, which is so ironic because most of the entrepreneurs and successful people that I know go on this really kind of winding journey of like, it was here and then there, and then a week over here, and then we found some business over there, and then we kind of repositioned to here. And that's the beauty of what you said it earlier. It's the beauty of the journey. So you don't have to have it all figured out. And then I always, I'm always cautious to say to entrepreneurs, when they're going to bring on money, investors, that changes things significantly. I think there's a lot of ways that you can kind of, give pieces of equity away, bring in partners that are going to do small projects to help things out, bring in advisors or advocates. Don't build up a big payroll right out of the gate, before you go too fast and increase your burn rate, so to speak. Obviously there's certain circumstances where, raising VC money and going after a market and hiring a team and, the optics of what the valuations look like because of that team. There's all kinds of reasons why you would need to go faster, bigger, faster, stronger, so to speak. But, without that, true north compass of exactly what it is that you're building, I think it's okay to kind of take it piecewise and build a group of, advocates. I'm a big fan of fractionals. I know a number of fractional executives in my career. I'm a big fan of, obviously, outsourcing and finding people that are really, really good at what they do, especially if you do need someone full time and you may not have the early budget to afford something. There's a lot of talented people all over the world that can add value to your organization before you build your team of local experts right in your backyard, if that's kind of what you're looking for.
That's awesome. And another connected question, because you mentioned about outsourcing as well. Outsourcing in the current market is no longer an enterprise game. Like pretty much everyone, even startups, small, medium organizations, everyone is, using outsourcing as an opportunity. This transition period, how do you find it? Or where do you find it going in the future? Would that still continue in the same nuance on people outsourcing to, different geographical regions? Or would that, because AI is definitely coming to the picture now, with AI, would there be some changes that would be aligned in this process?
Great questions. Two-part answer. So I stay up on really global employment statistics, markets, United States. I've got clients in Europe, and the general trend that I'm seeing is that there's going to be job growth in virtually every market. When I say market, I just mean like global market, like North America, Europe. Industry segments may have obviously different kind of variations, but I actually see that the global employment market is going to grow at a much higher rate. Right? If I've seen statistics where the U.S. labor market might grow, for staffing may grow at 3%, whereas the global might grow as much as 10%. And I actually see that for two reasons. I think, believe it or not, outsourcing is it's still in its early stages. And I say that with caution because frankly, it's been going on for 30, 40 years and it's not really a young industry. But obviously, the COVID pandemic was an absolute game changer. And then I actually think that AI is an even bigger game changer for that because I think it enables a global audience to be empowered at a level that has never been the case. So, for example, my team in India, they are consuming everything and anything in terms of leveraging AI tools to make their jobs easier, to make their lives more effective and whatnot. So I do see it being a major growth segment, and I actually think that AI, and again, this is just my humble opinion. I've seen a lot of technology trends over my 30-year career, and everything from the early .com days. I mean, I sent my first email when I was in college, so I'm not a young pup. So I've seen a lot of technology advancements during my lifetime, and AI is clearly one of the biggest game changers. But I don't think it's going to be a true eliminator of jobs the way that people are forecasting. I've been to various labor conferences all over the world, and I hear some pretty doomsday predictions. In terms of like 60% reduction in the need for labor. I just don't buy that. I think the early excitement and hype in every single technology trend far exceeds the actual result of that. And I'm not saying that AI and the internet and cell phones and mobile, all of these things were major advancements and major developments. But the early excitement becomes, I guess, it becomes more and more commonplace, right? And at the end of the day, in 3, 4, 5 years, every company is still going to need people doing work and producing things alongside their fellow machines and robots and agents, so to speak.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's one thing that I definitely agree with you on large scale, that AI is not the primary reason of people losing their jobs. It is actually creating a significant amount of opportunity out. We just have to be ready for that. So definitely agree on that. The next question is kind of segueing into the technology innovation and AI sector, so we can work around that.
Perfect.
So how do you see AI actually influencing leadership as a quality?
I think it's harder than ever to be a leader in this environment, and I'm going to tell you with some caution as to like kind of what I mean by that. I think that as a leader, I've always deferred to people within my organization to be experts at what they do. I'm not an accountant, but I have a controller or a CFO. I'm not a marketing expert, but I have a CMO or a director of marketing. I'm not a sales expert, but I have my chief revenue officer, my director of sales, or maybe some excellent sales guys. So I think all the while I've deferred in a lot of ways, and I think most leaders will defer to their actual experts at what they do. I think what makes that difficult is now you have the potential of applying AI to virtually any aspect of your organization. And from a leadership perspective, that's a challenging endeavor.
Yep.
We used to do technology roadmaps where, companies that were innovating in the early, 2000s, late 2000s timeframe, and they needed to innovate what they did as an organization and put their business into some kind of an e-commerce or online transactional customer experience. That was a challenging endeavor. There was a lot of customers and companies that really struggled with creating a digital roadmap and getting their complete operation out of kind of the way it was to the way it is today. And I think that's going to be the case for many years to come. I think that the the excitement around AI and the speed of AI is enticing. You can you can build things, you can roll things out so quickly, and it's changing so quickly. Like if you had told me how quickly Claude would take over conversational aspects of AI just within the last 6 months, I wouldn't have believed it. And who knows what's coming a year from now? But I think it's a similar landscape to what I've seen before. A lot of excitement, a lot of startup money, a fragmented environment of all these things. There's a lot of these AI tools. I've seen them, the infographics on LinkedIn and Instagram of all the different tools they can use. And I think that'll probably remain for a number of years. But I know people that specialize in operational efficiency and excellence, and it still comes down to people, process, and technology. And how you're using AI is it being applied in the right way? Are the different AI projects and pieces being prioritized properly? Because certainly some of them have a higher value proposition than others. So those are the things that I think it makes it really challenging for leaders these days with AI.
And thank you for sharing that, Brian. Another thought or question around is, what does leadership or what role does leadership play in responsible AI adoption in an organization?
That's a really good question. So I have several different organizations that I work with. My customers, I always kind of take a peek into what they're doing because we're usually a pretty integral part of how they operate. And certainly some of them are, full steam ahead on AI and what they're doing. It's interesting because you get some organizations that are top down AI driven, where they're like almost following a kind of a script of, hey, I've talked to my colleagues, I've surveyed the market, here are some of the bigger players, this one costs this, I think it's got a good value proposition, let's purchase this kind of solution and then roll it out to the organization. And I think that can be effective. I've seen that specifically in one of my clients where they're kind of building AI into what they do, and it's almost like an existing technology stack that they license from a traditional software company. So there's that kind of AI kind of top down, and then I've seen some ground roots up where it's like you have either internal technology person or someone from the software development team. And again, that's a wide range of perspectives and personality types. You have certainly a lot of technology people are embracing AI. It's a natural migration for them, but some of them are embracing it and learning it and consuming it at a much higher rate than others. So you get almost pockets of this kind of new technology that spurs up from parts of the organization, right? And sometimes it spurs from the people that are responsible for A, B, C, and they know the most about, how to apply AI to that problem. And so there's a solution that gets created in a part of the organization that it's great, but maybe there's another part of the organization that would need some of that AI investment and knowledge and expertise to add more value to the overall organization. And it's funny, so AI solves things so quickly that you can usually take person one and who's figured out this part of it and say, "Hey, okay, well, go figure this part out too." And that I truly think that AI and AI prompt experts and AI kind of machine learning engineers, they're going to be absolutely invaluable to organizations for many, many years to come. So I think that's going to be a real differentiator for companies.
Very interesting. Thank you so much for sharing this. I think this insight definitely works around how a business can, correctly put AI into the plan of how do they want to implement in the next 5 to 10 years. And I think that's one answer that definitely will stay. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Lovely. Jumping on to the next segment, Brian, which is strategy and business. Now, first is a quite a generic question. How do you define strategy in practical terms?
I used to be very, very forward thinking. I used to be very, very, I guess, looking ahead as to what the industry, what technology, what is changing, right? Because a strategy really centers around what are you going to do as an organization, and how are you going to adapt your organization to changing environments? And so, I had aspirations and goals of, being a chief strategy officer at one time, and I really kind of loved the idea of looking at startups and what their strategy is, the problems they're trying to solve, and where they're going with things. I think I've kind of evolved over my career into realizing that it's all the same. It's all a similar thing, right? At the end of the day, you have numbers to count. Right? You have a product to sell. You have a product or a service to sell. You have a sales team to sell it. You have a marketing team to generate leads. You have an operational team to do the fulfillment on said product or service. You have an accounting team to do the invoicing, the collections, and ultimately the financials and all that stuff. So there's a simplicity in that for me these days. That's not going anywhere. Business is going to be business for a long time to come. We're going to be charging money for things, hopefully making a profit, counting the dollars, and ultimately, moving the company forward as a business. So I think that it's a grounding thought for me, because I think nowadays with the way that things are changing and evolving, and at the end of the day, there's still some things that are rooted in simplicity, and that are still going to be the fundamentals for forever almost.
Good to hear. Thank you so much for this. Next on same line, I think, why do you think organizations struggle to execute strategy, like even from the early days to even when they've become big? There are definitely challenges. And how do you believe, like from your experience in the several industries that you worked with, how do you believe the early challenges of strategy making can be solved?
So if you're talking about strategy from like a change perspective, I have a very specific opinion on that. And it stems from, a multitude of change management projects and business initiatives at large enterprise clients. Change is hard. Change is hard for many, many reasons. Okay. When you have an organization, every member of the organization typically has an input and an output. I almost think of a company or organization as a software program, right? There's an input, there's a process, and there's an output. And every single person or organization, along with the enterprise systems that runs that organization, have an input, a process, and an output. So when you talk about change and you talk about a strategic change and how things are done, that becomes a big challenge, because it's not only a change of an individual, but it's a change of the entire team and the processes that ultimately, make the whole organization work. So not only do I have to think about, oh gosh, my job is changing, that may mean that my inputs are changing, which means person A, who's my input to things I need to do, also needs to change, and then I need to change my output. So that's going to change person B's input as to what they're doing. So so, and this is what I think ERP, enterprise resource planning, big SAP, Oracle, big enterprise business systems. Those were always the most challenging projects during my consulting career, and I did a couple of them because you really, really had to think deep and long about how each individual decision was going to change a multitude of stakeholders, and how that was going to change things. And frankly, it's similar. It's very similar. AI is no different than a big ERP. It's really not. ERP automated things back in the day that AI is automating in a different way today. It's just a form of taking work that you do, that someone does as an individual, and transferring that work over to a system, right? And so, back in the day, it was ERP systems and, doing all the bookkeeping. And then that turned into operational things. And, then it turned into manufacturing and all kinds of different aspects of, the modern day ERP systems. And even those are, evolving and incorporating AI into what they're doing. But I think what people underestimate is once an individual learns what they do best, right? And the job that they're doing, part of it becomes kind of their identity. And that's a difficult thing to do. So you're basically saying, hey, the way that you did things, because this is how I did it back in the day, the way that you're doing things today, we're going to change the way you do that. And it can be kind of difficult for someone to hear for a couple of reasons. One, it's the way they do that. It's the way they do their job today. So that's a change. And two, you're essentially introducing like your version of how they should do it better, right? Which is, again, it's a slippery slope when you're talking to somebody who's doing the job and doing it usually quite well. And then you as this, consultant slash strategy expert slash efficiency expert is coming along to tell that person how to do their job. It's a difficult thing to do. And that's why I think organizations as a whole have a really hard time changing and adapting.
Well, that's literally just you've given me a mirror to look on. That's exactly something that I resonate with, because there are challenges as a consultant on telling people that you are doing it good, but you can do it better, and we can help you with that. And the simple response is, "Why do I care?" So
Usually.
Now, thank you for sharing that, Brian. This brings us to the next, and I think my favorite part of the show as well, which is personal reflections. So, Brian, would you be able to share what achievement are you most proud of till date?
Yeah, I think, in 2010, I left an organization that I had, helped grow, and we had a lot of financial struggles in the 2008 timeframe. We were doing large enterprise system projects for kind of bigger enterprise clients. And when 2008 hit, it was a pretty devastating financial time. We lost, about 50% of our revenue in a very short period of time. Had to make some really difficult decisions, and in terms of cuts and really readjust the business, and really took over a staffing and recruiting company, at a small scale, and didn't really know a whole lot about how to run a staffing and recruiting company. Partnered up with some great individuals to help grow that, and really I think I kind of brought a lot of enterprise strategy, some of the aspects that I had learned were able to really directly apply to that, and we grew that company from zero in revenue to $50 million in revenue over a 10-year time frame, with really no investment, no outside investment. Borrowed $100,000 from my stepfather, and paid him back handsomely. But ultimately, bootstrapped, self-funded, grew it with a good group of people working hard and making the right decisions and doing what's right for our customers and making the business better every day. So it was a long journey, and partners and personalities and clients and all the people aspects of all that it goes into running a business can be very challenging at times. But I'm really most proud of just continuing to persevere and grow year after year. I've led three different companies in various capacities to the Inc. 5000, which is a fastest kind of growing company list, like 13 times. And so I'm proud of that. I'm proud of growing at, is the most important thing as a business. I always say that if you're not growing, you're dying. And I don't care what business it is. I don't care what you're doing. You're going to have problems all day, every day, year after year. They're going to change month to month, year to year. But you just got to keep solving them. So, I think that is what I'm most proud of, is just the perseverance of kind of, it's nothing flashy, it's nothing exciting, but the perseverance to accomplish it is what I think I'm most proud of.
Oh, that's one inspiring story. I think I needed to listen today. That's Thank you so much for sharing it. It's really good. Awesome. Thanks, Brian, for this. Jumping on to the next one. What keeps you motivated day to day?
Yeah, it's funny. Again, I think age plays a part in kind of what motivates people. I think early on, I was probably very money motivated and almost competitive. I think as I had a younger family, I was more survival and providing for my family motivated. I think now I'm just excited to work with really good people, whether it be my own people. I'm excited to work with my clients. Um, you know, I've actually turned down business because there's people that I don't want to work with. And if I get a gut feel on somebody right out of the gate, I'm like, no, I'm not. No, I'm too old and too wise to be dealing with you as a client. And so yeah, I think now what motivates me is keeping great people around me and attracting great people to me, and that's really in a lot of ways what it's all about. So yeah.
Awesome. And how would you like to be remembered professionally?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've led a few different types of businesses, and I have some ideas on other ones that I would do. And I'm not sure, my professional chapter is completely written. And I could see myself doing different things in the future. But in terms of how I want to be remembered, I think that one of the most important things that you can do in business is to be honest and ethical. Like, say what you do what you say. There's always going to be tension. A business is naturally born with tension. It's a constant pull on financial resources between clients, employees, and shareholders. It's a never-ending tug of war. So there's kind of an inherent tension that exists in business, and so I think it's easy to get pulled one way or another. I see people being I see really, really nice and genuine people getting taken advantage of by their clients or their employees. I see really, really hard, aggressive people almost being the ones that are taking advantage of their clients or their employees and, increasing their own shareholder value. Uh, and that's kind of, I would want to be remembered as somebody who I think was just fair and did things in the most honest and upstanding way possible.
And inspiring as well. Thank you so much for that, Brian. This brings us to the last segment of our show, which is the rapid fire round. I've got a few questions, and they may have some choices that you'll have to make, or some short answers that you'll have to give. So let's start with this: leadership or management? Your style.
Leadership.
Mentor or experience based?
Experience based. I would say experience based.
Awesome. A book or a movie that has influenced you the most?
I would say early on in my career, I was really, really influenced by the 4 Hour Work Week, which was just a different perspective for me. So just because I had come from a consulting Deloitte background, and so I know it's rapid fire, but when you think of everything in terms of billable hours, a 4 Hour Work Week doesn't make you a lot of money. So,
awesome. One habit that you will never compromise on.
I'm sorry, what's one?
One habit that you will never compromise on.
Yeah, I think that exercise has become one of those habits for me. Is just I think I've had waves of a lot of exercise, waves of not a lot of exercise, and now it's kind of a regular occurrence.
Awesome. Best career advice you have received in your early days?
I think the best career advice was from my former partner, and it was when we were in a bit of a fight, and he said to me, he said, every business sucks. He said, I've run restaurants, I've made movies, I've run mortgage companies, I've done, escrow companies. He's like, every business has an element of suck to it. And the sooner that you accept that, the better off you're going to be to just appreciate what's good about it.
Love that. Absolutely love that. That's awesome. And one word that defines success?
I think it has to be happiness. I think, I see a lot of people chasing money. I see a lot of people chasing, you know, a solution or, a thing. And without the baseline of happiness in what you're doing, it's a futile exercise.
Absolutely agreed on that. And one last question is a message for the next generation of leaders.
Um, Appreciate people because as much as you think that you can solve all of these problems and you have this little genius in your laptop and phone right now that can answer any question that you throw at it, people are really ultimately the most important part of the human existence. In fact, I would argue that without people, there is no, without a frame of reference, right? It's almost impossible to have a human experience without the frame of reference of other humans. So I see far too many, kids just entrenched in social media and online and now AI, and I see a lot of solopreneurs out there. And honestly, I I'm concerned. I am, because I don't think that's an existence that's a happy existence. And again, if you define success, if I can build $1 million company in my garage using just my laptop, and and I'm have all the financial success in the world, uh, but but then what, right? Like, I just, having made money, it's just, there's far too much value in experiencing it with others to try to, you know, isolate it and do it yourself in a garage. So,
I actually love that thought, and it just a thought that hit my mind as well, and I'm paraphrasing it. Something on a quote of happiness is not about what you achieve, but what you share with others. So the others part is definitely important, and I so agree with that on this thought as well. And Brian, thank you so much. This brings us to the end of our show. It has been an amazing conversation with you, inspiring, a lot that I've learned from this last 40 minutes. And I definitely would love to share these thoughts with the audience as well. And I'm sure they will learn a lot as well. So thank you. Thank you so much for being here.
yeah, I appreciate you having me on, Corey. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Brian. On
Thanks.
that note, to our viewers, for more such inspiring stories and amazing insights, do subscribe to Let's Talk Strategy. Until next time, keep thinking, keep building, and keep talking strategy. This is Let's Talk Strategy. Thank you.